Pictured as a young Vladimir Putin, who is part of the KGB security team, we see him introducing his son to the former US President Ronald Reagan. Also pictured is Mikhail Gorbachev. Vladimir Putin came to power with the sponsorship of Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin came to power with the sponsorship of the Russian oligarchs. For millennium, the cabal has been using the Hegelian dialect. The Hegelian dialect was the policies of George Hegel, a German philosopher. All historical events emerge from a conflict between opposing forces. The whole purpose of the dialectic is to control the masses like herding sheep. Whenever people see a group or belief system as evil, they instinctively move to the political opposite of what they identified as threatening.
The order has either set up or penetrated just about every significant research, policy and opinion-making organisation in the United States, in addition to the church, business, government and politics. The evolution of America reflecting individual opinion, ideas and decisions at the grassroots is simply not true. On the contrary, says Anthony Sutton, the writer of this book, the broad direction has been created artificially and stimulated by the order. He's a brilliant writer, this guy. Next, please. Here it is. Now watch this one. The order follows the philosophies of George Hegel, a German philosopher. All historical events emerge from a conflict between opposing forces. Excuse me, everybody. You must have a conflict before we get the New World Order. Now he divides the world, this philosopher called Hegel, he says part of the world is thesis, the other half is antithesis, and when you bring them together that is called synthesis. Let's look at South Africa, shall we? Thesis, Nelson Mandela, ANC. Antithesis, Buthelezi, the Zulus. There is no chance of peace between the two groups. Henry Kissinger goes over there. The next thing, he brings them together and they have the rainbow nation, the new South Africa. It happens. That is called synthesis. What else? America and Russia. America, thesis, Russia, antithesis. At a certain time in history, they come together and they now have a headquarters running space program together. It used to be you hate each other. They said the axis of evil. They said the evil nation, satanic, and so on. Next thing you see Ronald Reagan next to Gorbachev, and now it's Ronnie and Gorby.
Putin's role was to follow Yeltsin's footsteps, as the Hegelian dialect was already played out in bringing the two nations, the US and Russia, together. But something terrible has gone wrong for the cabal and their world takeover. In the beginning, Vladimir Putin was playing a very complex multi-level game, just like a double agent, with some of the most insidious forces on the planet. He even accepted bribes and played the game of corruption until he turned the game against the cabal. Things have certainly changed in Russia. The Western worldwide media started the biggest lie and propaganda campaign against Putin and every country who opposes the New World Order. Keep in mind that currently 80% of US electronic and print media are owned by only 6 large corporations. This development has taken place in the last 2 decades. These corporations are elite-owned. They demonize Putin on a daily basis to the sleeping dead and the gullible. The US is fed up with their nation's corrupt, mendacious, ineffectual leadership that a group of Americans are seeking to join the Russian Federation. The group is collecting signatures for a national referendum on whether to remain a failed state, an economic basket case run by criminal neocons, or to join the Russian Federation under a president with a proven track record of bringing oligarchs to heel, said Bill Blatsky, head of the Join Russia Putin for President Committee. How embarrassing. They printed over 1 million bumper stickers. Top diplomat Christopher R. Hill says that Russia's response to the Ukraine crisis means that Moscow has betrayed the New World Order it has been a part of for the last 25 years. Russia is leading the fight for world freedom and has declared war on the New World Order imperialism. Behind Putin's success so far in foiling the cabal is a team of think tanks inside Russia and think tanks in Iran and other nations opposed to the NWO. They take their job seriously in trying to resolve and counteract all the threats in a diplomatic way and stay within international law, and at the same time show some claws and teeth, because keep in mind they also like winning. The cabal wanted to take over Syria, destroy Iran, and make Russia roll over and play dead in the Ukraine to control not only the Middle East, but control Eurasia. That's not likely to happen. Starting a Christian-Islam war, which is still on the cards to try and bring the last of the dialectic principles to bring the prophecies of the Bible.
There's only one more big one they want to do. That's Israel, thesis, Arabs, antithesis, and at the right time, using the Hegelian dialectical philosophy, they will bring those two groups together in a 7-year treaty, fulfill the Bible prophecy, and Jesus will come again. Amen. Whoa!
A note to the gullible: the prophecies are just suggestions being played out. Watch my holographic disclosure series. This story is so complex that I just wanted to outline some of the important issues on Russia and the dialectic principles on the first level of the illusion. There are many Kabbalistic levels at play here. The big question is, what will happen in Ukraine? Now that Crimea is part of Russia, it's game over for the bankers in Ukraine. The US can threaten Russia all it wants with sanctions, but the truth of the matter is, Russia holds all the ace cards up its sleeve, and it'll hurt America and Europe a lot more. Their think tanks are steps ahead. Russian troops are mounted on the border. Ukraine has no chance against them. Will NATO get involved? Nope. NATO is a paper tiger, and any aggression will be from the US. Will Russia go into Ukraine? They will first assess the number of dead, like 100 or 1,000, to how many will die in an actual conflict, if they do go in. Most probably the pro-Russians who've seized the government buildings will be sadly sacrificed, and nothing will happen. Unless many civilians are killed, Russia will not likely go in. They will use other methods and dry up Ukraine until it falters economically and through the court systems. America will do nothing to get involved. All this is happening as a diversion for what's going on in the US and Europe with the death of the world's currency. Their crimes against humanity is now all coming out in the open with all their banking scams, gold rigging, stock market rigging. Like blood-sucking vampires, they've looted the world and brought destruction, death, and poverty throughout the ages. Desperately, they'll try to pin the collapse on Russia to bring in the new money system, whitewash all the past through a third world war that has been diverted that many times by the think tanks in Russia and the opposing world. Remember, an all-out nuclear war is impossible, as explained in Holographic Disclosure 11. The modern new technology is just as devastating. If a world war does start, it would be mutual annihilation, which the world is not prepared to go ahead with. Which is nothing new. In fact, it's lost technology used thousands of years ago. No, it's not alien technology, as the cabal-run media will have us believe. Star Wars technology that mimics comet fallouts is right here, right now. They're so bright, they look like nuclear weapons. Billions of dollars to invest in comet diversions from hitting the Earth is a scam. I'll explain that later. Arab states are tumbling down, not by invading foreign armies like what happened in Iraq a decade ago, but this time by cunningly and remotely triggering all the hot button spots that will ultimately lead to instability, sectarian violence, and civil war. A quick look at Egypt. Vladimir Putin, aware of the Western conspiracy, fought back with absolute courage and determination. And so did General al-Sisi in Egypt. They both broke the rules as they stood against the US-EU plot to destabilize Russia and Egypt. Al-Sisi, a hero in the eyes of most Egyptians, has already proved that he is a sincere patriot and army commander who won't look the other way when the future of his country and his fellow citizens is jeopardized. Sisi is running for president. When he made the application for presidency, he handed to the government lawyers all his bank accounts and statements to show his financial positions and that he won't be taking any bribes. Imagine Western leaders doing that? Joke of the century. That democratically elected puppet tool, Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood, was doing nothing except making sure that the Egyptian domino would fall and shatter into irreparable pieces. This clueless Morsi, backed by Washington and Tel Aviv, was setting up the stage so that Egypt would join the chaotic circus of the new Middle East. They have failed, but are still causing big problems in Egypt. Russia has signed a lucrative arms deal with Egypt that will deliver the latest technology and weapons. Egypt is armed to the teeth thanks to Washington. They're ranked 5th in the world's largest Egyptian Air Force. With over 1,300 aircraft, 900 attack jets, 350 fighter helicopters, and 50,000 ready personnel, the EAF is a force to be reckoned with. Russia and the Arab countries have pledged billions in aid once the dust settles to turn Egypt back to the top 10 tourist attractions once again and boost their economy. A quick look at Syria. The U.S. backing off Syria is not by accident and was not by chance. The plan was mapped out carefully by all countries involved who got together and worked on a solution to stop another Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan from happening. Vladimir Putin's visit to London in June 2013 and meeting with British Prime Minister Cameron, President Putin passed on a message to the US, Israel, and France in response to their recent announcement that they will arm the al-Nusra fighters in Syria. A British intelligence reporter stated that Putin went to London bringing his own Russian-cooked food and did not consume anything from Britain, including water, as he even brought his own water with him, reportedly because he had concerns of being poisoned. The British intelligence site stated that Putin threatened to send other secret Russian-made weapons to Syria, which would tip the balance of power even further in favor of Syria, and reiterated that these weapons will not be used against Israel on condition that Israel will not participate in the war within Syria and neighboring countries. With the Russian Navy back in the Mediterranean and the Israelis threatening to attack their air defense weapons in transit, this gave the Russians no choice but to deploy all of their top-line weapon systems to protect their defensive deployment. Unsaid has been that any preemptive attack on the Russians would be dealt with in a full response so that the attacking party could then explain to its citizens once again why Syria was worth the devastation. Despite the media coverage, Syria has received the state-of-the-art defense and attack systems. The S-400 system has a range of over 400 miles and is considered more than a decade ahead of the most advanced U.S. counterpart. They're now working on the S-500s. Now with the Islander system in place, capable of clearing Golan Heights, minefields and underground bunkers, and not to speak of defeating air defenses, these enhanced systems, if delivered as claimed, combined with recent Iranian improvements in vertical attack anti-ship missiles, changes the balance of power in the Middle East. The improved version, the 1A Buratino, uses a combination of air and surface blast thermobaric warheads to defeat any armored enemy on open ground. This system, delivered to the Russian army only 2 years ago, is capable of stopping any main battle tank, including the M1A and the Israeli Markova. Putin clearly stated that the Middle East is going to witness a significant change. Syria will be armed with weapons that have never been seen before in the Middle East, including computer-guided smart missiles that never miss their target. He also added that Russia will supply Syria with Sken 5 ground-to-sea missiles that are capable of hitting and sinking any target up to 250 kilometers off the Syrian coast. Syria is now on the verge to final mop-up operations. The plan is to bring Syria back to its glory, make it a powerhouse nation of wealth and modernization, importing gas and oil. China's plans to build a super train from Damascus through Tehran back to China's mainland is on the cards. China also proposed that Germany and China cooperate on building a new economic Silk Road linking China and Europe. The implications for economic growth across Eurasia are staggering. So, which way will China head? All the way to the bank. China has no intention of aggressive takeovers like the West. China is only interested in trading. During his visit to Duisburg, Chinese President Xi Jinping made a masterstroke of economic diplomacy that runs directly counter to the Washington neoconservative faction's effort to bring a new confrontation between NATO and Russia. Russia has plenty of important friends and is aligned with the BRICS nations. Every nation on Earth, thanks to the aggression of the cabal, has to now arm itself to the teeth to protect its sovereignty. Wasted money in an arms racket when the people of those nations are living in fear and in poverty. The control of the US by the wealthiest families of the planet is exercised in a powerful, profound, and clandestine manner. The world now awaits World War III. Third World War is already here, called the Quiet War, being conducted under subjective biological warfare, implying extensive objectives of social control and destruction of human life. In other words, slavery and genocide. The concocted war on terrorism, false flags, looting, stealing, and false democracies. The list is endless. The US should have had their streets lined with gold at the enormous prosperity it possesses. Instead, it has been sucked dry by the cabal vampires. Vladimir Putin is not America's enemy, but a friend. Putin is emerging as a worldwide voice respected throughout Asia, the Middle East, South America, and even in the United States. People throughout the world are now uniting in knowing that they all have the same common enemy. Many people are thinking Putin is part of the New World Order. If this is so, then why is Syria, Iran, and Egypt still standing? But doesn't Russia have a Rothschild bank? Do you think Putin's going to change all that overnight? The foundation structure of banking and trading? Some say the world powers are splitting the cake. Only time will tell. But my gut feeling is telling me that people have had enough of this New World Order. Moscow is seeking the lead in an alternate BRICS-aligned faction that will pose a major threat to the unipolar future envisaged by the cabal. The New World Order plans are not going to schedule, or so it seems, a one-world government. Of course, the illuminated cabal knows this quite well, that humans will never accept it. How can they? How can there be a one-world government in this dualistic system when the left and right hemispheres of the brain exist? Therefore, the illusion of choice must be presented, but not necessarily a one-world government. There are things happening on different levels of reality, unseen and unknown by our ruler leaders. In the 1990s, tens of thousands of Russian troops training in the US and Russian military hardware being shipped in very unusual high quantities. There are also strange marking codes discovered in the back of a lot of signs that indicate a form of mapping directions for NATO foreign troops to get around in the US.
Now, when I was in America, I don't often say this, but I might as well say it here tonight. My driver, who has carried all the prophetic preachers across America before me, told me, he said, every time we get to a bridge, you watch. And we went through 38 states in 2.5 weeks, and every bridge we went near, there were men working underneath it, putting in steel girders. He said, that is for the United Nations tanks that are going to come in and take over America shortly. Is everybody clear what I'm saying tonight? This goes on tape. The whole of America will be inundated with United Nations troops. In fact, they're training now in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And very shortly, what they're going to do, George Bush is going to send the American troops out of the country to all these trouble spots called the axis of evil. And while he's got his own troops out of the country, the United Nations will take over America and imprison Christians and imprison patriots, because they're going to introduce their one world government. Anybody who is against it will be in prison.
One really needs to get a copy of top-notch researcher Jim Keith's Black Helicopters Over America, the endgame strategy to make this connection. Confrontations boldly draw the battle lines, allowing people to see what's going on but lately they seem to be going full steam ahead, making the moves more and more obvious. If Americans do wake up to the fact that their country is being dismantled piece by piece, and a sudden offensive is mounted against the patriot or populist movements in the US, then the initial strike forces that will come into force will be the black, unmarked helicopters, which can be equipped with massive firepower that can mop up hotspots of patriotic resistance. Could this also be why Homeland Security bought 1.6 billion rounds of ammo? FEMA will no doubt coordinate this final goal. However, not everything may go to plan and may go either way. So far, they have failed to disarm the American public.